If social media platforms had warning labels, they should say,
warning, this program may cause death.
damn.
Welcome to Broadlines,
A weekly video podcast by the Female Quotient,
where real headlines meet real conversation.
I'm Ray Williams, an entertainment, lifestyle, and culture journalist.
And I'm Natalie Lizarraga, a journalist and news anchor. Today on Broadlines, we're talking about how social media is causing a mental health crisis that is disproportionately affecting young teenage girls.
We're going to ask some very uncomfortable questions. What does it actually take to protect the next generation in a world that's permanently online that we almost can't escape? And who takes responsibility for that?
Today's guest is going to break that all down for us. Sharon McMahon, you know her online as Sharon Says So. Hopefully you're following. A former government and law teacher turned author, podcaster, and educator who has sparked this movement of informing and engaging citizens in this country with her nonpartisan, fact-first approach. We are so excited to have you on our show, Sharon. Welcome to Broadlines.
Welcome to Broadlines.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to look at the data that we've seen when it comes to teen girls and social media. What confirmed what you already knew, and what were you genuinely surprised about when you see these numbers?
You know, it's always shocking to hear statistics about the number of girls who are being negatively impacted emotionally. We always think about, feeling mad or feeling jealous or, just having a negative feeling, but I can't believe she said that. But to actually have so many negative feelings that it's resulting in physical injury to yourself, that your own mental well-being is so negatively impacted that it results in having to visit the hospital. That's a really disturbing thing that we have to address. We have to talk about where is it coming from and what can be done about it. It's, I'm a mom, and I know how challenging it is to exist in 8th grade as a girl who is, all of her friends are having fun without her. And what does that do when you can see evidence of it? There's a lot to unpack. I don't know if our psyches are really prepared for everything that is happening to us at this moment.
Wow. So much has changed since we were teenagers.
Yeah.
Like wasn't connected to the world as they are now. It's so much information coming in. Like, I think I was dialing up on AIM. That was like the closest thing.
And, a lot of people argue that we overprotect kids in our physical world, which, I think they're very protected. It's a good thing, but we vastly underprotect them online. How can policy help us return to a childhood kind of play-based model instead of, this phone-based model without overstepping, into maybe government overreach or, who other people parenting other people's kids, if you will?
I think it's a great question, and one that we need to be having at a policy level and not simply at a parenting level, because this is both of those things, right? It's parenting, but it's also policy, because there are many other activities that we know can be harmful for children that we regulate at a government level. We don't just decide some parents can put their kids in car seats and some don't have to. It's parental choice. We've decided that some things are so risky that everybody needs to have safety measures that are put in place for them. We don't allow 14-year-olds to just decide, I'm going to take up vaping today. They might be able to skirt the rules, but we don't just allow them to walk into a convenience store and buy the materials they need for that. So in addition to individual parenting, of course, we do need to be having the conversation about what does it look like for everyone in a school to not have access to something that might be harmful, like tobacco products, or like social media platforms that may be causing some of these issues. So the public policy aspect is one of the trickiest because, of course, as the United States, we tend to be highly individualistic. We tend to value freedom of choice. They're my children. I can decide what's best for them. And then on the other side, we also have these very, very real safety concerns that don't only impact your children. They impact the entire country. Right? Like what's happening with an 8th grader today is happening with all the 8th graders or with many of the 8th graders. So in terms of like how not to get involved in government overreach, I think one of the most important conversations we need to be having is establishing what are safe levels of involvement in social media. And these are things that are being researched and substantiated right now. What do constitute safe levels? Is it none for children under a certain age? Is it 1 hour a week? That's actually in some ways harder to create a time limit than it is to just have a hard yes or no. We don't say to children, it's fine if you smoke 5 cigarettes, but more than 5 is too harmful, right? So I would argue that in cases of especially younger teenagers, that likely the correct answer is a really, really limited or no use of social media. And that's the safe amount, because we don't have an established safe amount. Just like we don't have an established safe amount of alcohol that is appropriate for a 12-year-old. It's just safer that they don't do it.
And even if we did have an established amount, how would we even go about kind of enforcing that? Because I don't know about you, but on Instagram, I have my thing set to like 2 hours. And when it pops up, I'm like, well, I guess I'll continue scrolling today. So I can't imagine if I'm making that decision, having to then kind of police my 12-year-old into saying, okay, well, your social media said 1 hour, you know, what do you do? Give me the phone. So I can see where that might be, you know, the best solution is a better policy that's kind of eliminating it.
It's so interesting you say that. I've never thought about it that way. Just saying no. I'm a mom too, and saying no. Like I think of my toddler. Well, this whole thing about toddlers and no screen times. Wait till they're 3. We're like, people are inundated with that information of like, don't give it to them. But then when it comes to like my niece or nephew who are 12 and 11, they're like, they have phones, and nobody has policed that. But they're like really hardcore about the don't have any screen time till 3. And so it's like, why aren't we doing that the entire way? They're still kids. It doesn't make much sense to me.
They're still children with developing brains, but when you're a 12-year-old, you have the ability to make life-altering decisions in ways that even a 3-year-old does not. 3-year-old can't decide to get into a car with somebody who's drunk driving or is high, or is engaging in social media activities that can have lifelong consequences. So I would argue that the stakes are perhaps even higher for preteens and young teenagers than they are for our little toddlers, watching an episode of Bluey, for example.
It's very scary to think about having a teenager right now.
There was an incident recently. Somebody pulled up an old video of a mutual friend in which that video was like of a 12-year-old, her, having fun, being silly, singing a song in a silly voice, like people should be free to live their childhoods that way, right? And they reposted it recently as a way to try to humiliate her. And this video was taken like 6 years prior. It was used as a tool to try to harm her many years later. And it was like that person had been hanging on to that video.
That's so cruel.
For all of those years. It's so great. And so those are the kinds of things then that make you feel paranoid, makes you feel like every aspect of my life is being filmed, and that somebody can use it against me at some point in the future. Children have to engage in self-censoring. Even when they're just having fun with their friends. You should be able to sing a song in a silly voice with your best friends and not have it used against you 6 years later. I mean, aren't you glad that a lot of what you did when you were children
100%.
is not on the internet?
It's on a VHS somewhere.
Maybe 8 all the way through at least 25. I am so glad that it was
it's a relieving. You're relieved that stuff. I feel that's so cruel to do to another girl.
Yes.
We've seen other governments and other countries try to, because this is a worldwide thing. We're talking about the U.S. for us, obviously, but this is happening all over. Social media is everywhere. In Denmark, they want 15 to be the minimum age to create any sort of social media account. France is exploring a digital curfew where you have to be offline. South Korea's banned phones in schools. So globally, we've noticed that everyone is taking a different approach because this is a global problem. Which of these do you think would make the biggest difference for teen girls?
My personal viewpoint is that there needs to be a minimum age to create an account. I think getting off of the internet at a certain time each night so you can get sleep. As a longtime teacher, I can tell you that like adolescent sleep habits are a huge problem, and like go to bed is one of the the biggest things we can be telling our children. Go to sleep. That's it. Of course, it's a little harder to police those kinds of things. It's a little hard. People figure out ways to get around it. Like,
I just straight up ignore mine.
You just are like passcode. Bypass passcode. And there are exceptions that you can always think of. What if a teenager has a job at the Burger King and they need to get picked up? There's so many possible exceptions for things like curfew rules. This isn't to say that they have no value, but I just don't think that the value is there to allow children to create social media accounts. You know, I've been online for a few years, you know, like I have a lot of followers. I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of hate comments, even from strangers, right? Even from people who are misinformed and saying crazy things. I understand how challenging that can be to work through. And now imagine people at your place of employment or people at your school being able to make those kinds of comments about you anonymously. I saw what you were wearing today. You look ridiculous. You look like trash. You know, like fill in the blank with the insults you can hurl at somebody. I just don't see the upside. I don't see the upside of subjecting our children knowingly to this kind of environment.
Especially when we grew up, most of us, without social media and did just fine. We didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I said, there are advantages to it and we know what those are, but do they really outweigh the harm is something that I always wonder. And especially, you know, many of us as grown adults, I don't know if you've seen the little bricks or whatever that you can put your phone in.
Yes, I have one.
To like, to turn.
Yes.
So if that's what's needed for us as
an
grown-ups
adult,
that
right.
apparently have authority over our own minds, what happens to a developing mind? I think, you know, it must be double. But, you know, for women in our audience who are both mothers and professionals, what do you say to the mom that feels, you know, completely overwhelmed or outnumbered, you know, by the tech and the pressure and the platforms of what Natalie was mentioning, which is, you know, do we give them screens? Do we not give them screens? What's your advice for moms in the position who are having to decide, what do I do with my 13-year-old when everybody has a phone and everyone's on here?
Yeah. I can tell you that my older children, we gave them phones and then used like all the screen time limits and all the parental controls. And that was a constant battle with the children. It was a constant battle. Can I just have 15 more minutes? Can I just, you know, like the amount of negotiating. Don't you remember like arguing with your own parents about like, and you just develop more arguing skills. That's all it is. You're just honing the arguing skills.
So full lawyer at 15.
Exactly.
Just debating.
Yes.
And they'll break eventually.
Yeah. And you know which parent is more
yes.
susceptible.
Yes.
I would say to parents who are wondering the right route to take, in my mind, it's giving your children a phone when it's appropriate to do so, say 12 years old, that does not have access to the internet. And that way they can still engage with their friends by talking on the phone. I listen to my daughter talk on the phone all of the time, which some research shows is actually a really healthy way to build connections.
Really?
Talking on the phone is good for children. You're listening to tone of voice. You are engaging in an interpersonal relationship in ways that you don't get when you're just texting. We all know that you can't hear inflections with texting, which is why we have to use
read them, though.
emojis.
I read the inflections.
You know, in my mind, having done it both ways, the easier and better route is the phone without access to the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find it so interesting the talking on the phone part too, because I feel like that's a lost art. I feel like that's something as a teen. And you had to not only... You had to call people and speak to their parents to speak to them. Like I had to be like, hello,
Hi,
Mr.
is
Such
Ray
and such.
home?
Can I speak to your son? Like what? And I feel like most teens today can't imagine having to, you know, there's no house lines anymore. So I can't imagine having to, you know, hey, Aunt Sharon, can I speak to, you know, so we're missing that part of it as well.
Pause real quick. Ray's analogy for being a child was, can I talk to your son as a little girl?
If you could get one policy passed at the federal level tomorrow to protect especially teen girls online, what would it be and why that one?
If I could get one policy passed at the federal level, it would be a minimum age requirement to be able to access social media platforms that have algorithms that are designed to be addictive. Right? But that's what part of what makes social media enjoyable to use is it learns what you like and it gives you more of it. Totally been there. And also it feeds you things you didn't know you were interested in. Oh, I didn't know that I was interested in miniature dog houses. You know, like fascinating.
But
turns out I definitely
love
am.
them.
I love miniature cows now.
Exactly. I absolutely need a Shetland pony. You know, like those are the things that bring us delight, which I fully partake in. This is not I work in social media, so this is not a like, you know, under no circumstances should anyone ever go on the internet. But you know, those algorithms are also designed to be addictive and also designed to help us feel angry about things, because the more we can feel angry, the more likely we are to continue to use it. I mean, if you think back to times in you know, United States history, say 9/11, when something scary had happened, you immediately go to your television. You immediately tune in. You want to find out more. That the same is true. That same neural pathway is true on the internet. It's on social media. If you feel angry about something, I can't believe he did that. It makes you want to keep finding out more.
Yes.
You keep scrolling. You want to read the comments. And now that you're deep in the comments, now the algorithm has really learned, oh, she'll read this for 20 minutes.
Yes.
So it's designed to keep you on the platform. It's designed to be addictive. As you're saying, like, if adults have to implement external limits with, like, I'm bricking my
Like a
phone
full brick.
now, you know, yes. I really think at the federal level, we should have a minimum age requirement to access platforms that we know are addictive, just like we have minimum age levels to access other things that we know are addictive.
What would you actually recommend that age to be in from your research and everything that you've kind of looked at?
There's not a magical age in which somebody's brain matures. You know, like, we all know some 25-year-old men who are like, you should not be on the internet. Right? Like, we can all think of a few, right? Ideally, there'd be some kind of maturity test, but that's not happening, right?
They'd probably cheat on that quiz anyway.
Yeah, right.
They'd give it to a girl and be like, take this for me.
Yes. I mean, ideally, you'd like to say you need to be an adult to use this, but I will make one argument against making the age 18, which is the same argument for driving a car, which is that it is better to have a trusted adult help you learn how to do something reasonably safely while you are still living in their home, as opposed to just being like, best of luck.
Yeah.
You know,
You're old enough now, and magically you know how to use it.
Maybe the research would demonstrate in the future that 18 is the right age, but at right now, I would say 16 or 17, so that they have a chance to learn how to operate a car, learn how to use social media with parental guidance before they leave home.
So we've seen data that shows that girls spending 5+ hours a day on social media, they're actually 3 times more likely to experience depression. Does the current U.S. legislation focus enough on this time on the device, the time that these teenagers are spending on the device, or are we kind of only scratching the surface when it comes to how much content someone is consuming?
There's basically no national legislation about, you know, curtailing the use of social media for teenagers. There's piecemeal legislation at the state level. There are school policies, phones away for the day, but we don't actually have any kind of comprehensive legislation about this of any kind. Aside from platform level policies that say, yes, I am 13, there's nothing illegal about your 8-year-old making a social media account.
Right.
One of the big challenges with this is just how slow Congress is to act on any kind of technology. They're very slow to act in a regulatory fashion with anything that is like new and cutting edge. There have been social media hearings where the CEO of a social media platform has testified before Congress, and they're asking the platform CEO questions. And a member of Congress asked the tech CEO, is your platform Wi-Fi? Like, they legitimately believed that the social media channel was Wi-Fi. And the tech CEO was like, Senator, no.
Sir.
No.
What?
My platform is not Wi-Fi. Okay? So I don't think that every member of Congress is that uneducated about social media, but certainly some of them are. They don't know the difference between Wi-Fi and social media. And it's not that they don't have access to this information. They probably have a bunch of 20-year-olds that work in their office. They could say, so is this Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Like, they could ask.
That's who is kind of making or not making decisions for your teenager.
Right, exactly. So when the group that's in charge of making these kinds of rules doesn't know the difference between social media platform A and a Wi-Fi connection, it makes the process very slow.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It makes
I can imagine.
very slow. There needs to be some kind of speeding up of the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
At least on the federal level, I mean, like you said, parents can only do so much.
Yeah.
You know, you feel that pressure. We talked about arguing. Like, you feel the pressure from your teenage daughter or son when it comes to the internet. You're like, finally, you're gonna break, because honestly, you get annoyed. You're like, I just am so sick of having this argument with you. We have to come to a compromise. Here, just take the phone. You know, like, there's so many things. And then it's just a slippery slope that there's no regulations for when they do finally have it. Like, say you give in and you're like, well, I hope there's stuff lined up to protect you, but there just isn't.
I can tell you that I recently, not long ago, got a new account on a social media platform that I had not been on before. And so the algorithm of this platform doesn't know anything about me, right? Like, I intentionally did not feed it like, where are you from? What's your age? Like, I did not give it any information. And I can tell you that the content that I am served on that platform, while it tries to figure out what I like and what I interact with, is disturbing.
Yeah.
It is disturbing. Some of it is borderline porn. It is animated, borderline, very questionable content, where it's like, children should not be seeing this.
Yeah.
Some of it is so profane, where, like, words that children should never read. This platform does not know how old I am, you know? So this is part of the challenge here too, is that even if you are the most hardcore parent and you're like, absolutely not, no way in hell, you can't keep your children's friends off of that. You can't keep your child from accessing it via their friends or via the hallway at school. And so that's why, you know, like, it's just better if we have rules that apply to everybody.
Yeah. So Jonathan Haidt, who is the author of The Anxious Generation, describes puberty as a high plasticity period where the brain locks down adult patterns like learning languages and developing motor skills. So why is social media harmful for that particular development phase?
I think one of the most harmful things about social media, in addition to everything else we've discussed, is that it is preventing people from doing things in the real world. Most of what you love about the real world, people you admire in the real world, are not spending all of their time online.
Yeah.
The people that you look back on in history and think they really did some amazing things, they were not spending their time scrolling. They were spending their time engaging in real life.
Yeah.
And it's preventing people from doing that.
And to go with that, do you think that, you know, the teens that are on social media right now will be able to adapt without those skills if they have to? So, for instance, I remember I did this program called Semester at Sea, and I did it in like 2010. So we had Facebook, but I don't think it was Instagram around. Maybe barely. I think maybe Instagram came out right after, but we definitely had Facebook, because I remember we would go to the McDonald's in different countries to like log on to upload our pictures. So we had that. But while we were on the ship, it's basically a program that, you know, the ship sails around the world and you're taking classes on the ship. We didn't really have strong Wi-Fi, and you had to write your friends. You couldn't like text them and be like, meet me here. You had to write them notes and like say, meet me here, or I'm gone here, and do this. And like, I remember it being so strange because we were so used to just being able to instantly text and like, you know, kind of send each other pictures and send each other things. And, you know, I came back out of that being like, well, do I need to text someone if I tell you meet me here at 8? Just meet me here at 8. And I wonder what that kind of like adjustment is going to be, if they'll even have to adjust for teens if they come into situations where like you just can't use your phone. You just can't use social media.
You know, one of the hallmarks of some mental health challenges is a constant need for reassurance, right? Like, sometimes people who have anxiety have a constant need for reassurance. And that is one of the tools that social media and a tech-forward childhood, it enables that constant need for reassurance. If I say meet me at 8, I have the ability to contact you 4 more times to be sure. Hey, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
Hey, is 8 still good? Hey, I'm outside. Hey, I'm standing by the light pole. That it's actually helping us develop that neural pathway for the constant need for reassurance. Which can certainly be helpful if you're 12 and your mom's picking you up after the basketball game. But it can also be harmful if every aspect of our life has to be checked and checked and checked and checked and checked. That can feed into people's anxiety. I do think, though, that children, especially Gen Z, that the pendulum is going to start swinging away from social media.
Oh, good.
And I'm curious about your thoughts on this too. Like, do you see that trend emerging, that it's going to be less enjoyable? Like, people don't want everything they've ever done documented and uploaded onto the internet, and a move away from that?
Yes, I agree. I have one of my friends' kids, she's 30 now, which was unbelievable to me, but she's still considered millennial, but she's very, very like, she babysits for me and my 18-month-old, and she's like, oh yeah, no, I just have a digital camera, like, but will you need me? And I'm like, yeah, I need you to have your phone, you're watching my child. And she's like, okay, I'll turn it on for you. And I'm like, whoa, wild.
Can't imagine. Because
she's like, I just don't want, she's like, I take them on my camera, on my digital camera, and then I upload everything, then I decide what's going out into the world, as opposed to documenting the whole thing. And I was like, wow, like, that's what I used to do. I used to go to a bar with a digital camera that maybe made it home or didn't, and then it would go like in a Facebook, like it would go on Facebook, and that was it. That was like
Facebook albums.
Yeah, and then like that was it. But it didn't, like, it was like a week later, or like, you know. It's so, it's interesting to me, they're not really into they've already stopped drinking, and they're not into like any of the stuff that we were as elder millennials. So it's interesting for me to see, and it also makes me happy because I get worried for my young daughter because this stuff seems so overwhelming and I'm not ready yet. And to know that this generation is kind of pushing themselves away from documenting everything always makes me feel better. When it comes to a warning, a lot of people compare social media to cigarettes. Well, cigarettes have a warning that if you do this or that, or you're not of this age, you can't have them. A lot of people argue that that is what we need to have on social media. But beyond the label itself, what legal or regulatory powers would this designation actually unlock the government to hold these tech giants accountable?
Yeah, I mean, a parental warning label. You remember that when they started putting explicit warnings on music, where it was like parental warning.
Couldn't buy them.
That made me want it more.
That's right. That's right.
Couldn't get them.
Had to be a certain age. Yeah. That times have changed, clearly. You had to be a certain age to buy the CD with the E
and it was
on
like,
it. Yes,
TLC.
You had to get the clean. Oh,
gross. The clean versions are never good. Sorry.
They're
just
not. But I do remember there was a label.
Well, and they still have the label, you know, and the labels still exist. But if we're going to put a warning label on something, now we're getting into consumer protection laws, right? And so some people think that consumer protection laws are the tool by which we will be able to regulate social media platforms, consumer protection laws. And we've seen a number of lawsuits where an individual has sued, or a group of people have sued social media platforms, saying your product harmed me when I was a child. And this actually, one of these cases just recently wrapped up. Your product harmed me when I was a child. I am owed reparations from the harmful, addictive nature of your product. And so there is one school of thought that says that products that are made available for sale in the United States have to be reasonably safe for consumers, right? Now, you might be able to argue that, like, well, the social media platforms are free to use, but they are certainly selling your information, and you have to consent to that transaction. I will go on your platform for free. In exchange, you're going to collect all this data on me, and then you're going to sell it to third parties. That there is a transactional relationship to a social media platform. That if we start using consumer protection laws saying, no, your product needs to be reasonably safe to use. And if it's not reasonably safe to use, you need to warn us in advance. And if you don't, then you can be held liable legally for some of the negative effects of what's happening to society or to an individual.
You know, if we had these warnings, would we even heed them? You know what I mean? Because I know for the explicit warning, that kind of made me want
it more.
The TLC CD even more. And I actually did real life get in trouble for singing one of the bad words on that in front of my dad. And he was like, how do you even have this version? I'm like, that's the version I got. But we're seeing these ER visits for self-harm for teenage girls, you know, tripling almost between 2010 and 2020. And I think that trend also aligns with the rise of smartphone usage. And, you know, with the addictive qualities and the fact that we might want warnings, do you think U.S. policy response to social media related incidents should be similar to, you know, vaping or smoking or, you know, underage drinking or, you know, all the different consequences that we do have. And, you know, even if we have these warnings and all of that.
A lot of the research says that exactly what you're saying, that warning labels sometimes just make things more desirable. Especially if your brain is not all the way functioning. You're like, oh, you know, like my parents don't like it, so I do.
Yeah.
You know, like that. The vibes of that make it in some ways even more irresistible. So I honestly don't know how effective a warning label on social media is going to be for an adolescent. Adolescents by nature kind of view themselves as invincible. Like it could happen, but it probably won't. I probably won't get in a car accident. I probably won't get addicted to vaping. Like it's fine. So this invincible nature of your not fully formed brain, I don't know that you're able to consent when you are given a warning label like, yes, I fully consent to what could happen to me in the future. I don't know. I think that's too much to ask of a 15-year-old to give consent to what might happen to them in the future.
So do you think if there was a policy response that there were consequences? So like, if, for instance, like if you, I guess for smoking and vaping, you walk into the, place and you have to like show your ID, and then it's like, if you don't, the vendor who sold it to you or even alcohol is held responsible for that. Do you think that we can see policy that has a similar reform? And I know there have been some lawsuits in that direction, but do you think that's coming?
It's probably coming that people are going to start suing the platforms that enable students or enable children to download these social media platforms.
To download them?
Yes.
Not just use them, but download them.
The access is largely via app stores on the different phone platforms, right?
Interesting.
So it's exactly like what you're talking about. Like the convenience store that sells you the tobacco products when you're underage can get in trouble for selling those products to you. Just like a liquor store selling a 19-year-old, they can get in trouble. Is it potentially coming that app stores themselves can get in trouble for dispensing harmful products to children? It's not an unreasonable thing to think is in the future. It's certainly not, we're not here, but I can absolutely see that moving forward.
And that's interesting because I always think about it as you would go after the platform itself, but going after the distributor of the platform, because that's true. Nobody, if you have an underage drinking situation, nobody says, "Oh, I'm going to sue Hennessy." They sue the whoever it is that sold it to them.
It's both of those things, right? Like you have to make it illegal for an underage person to use first, and then you enforce the law in part by going after the people who dispense that regulated item.
Well, according to Australia's Online Safety Amendment Act, social media platforms could be fined up to $49.5 million for failing to properly verify someone's age as old enough to get onto these platforms. So could a platform-first liability model maybe work here in the U.S., or, because people love this one, do our First Amendment protections make that legally impossible for us to do?
So I think this is a very interesting question and a very interesting legal frontier. It's certainly untested at this point, but the Supreme Court actually recently heard a case about age verification of adult content. They literally just heard this case during the last Supreme Court term, in which people sued saying that a certain state's age verification law for adult porn content violated their First Amendment rights, saying I have a right to be anonymous on the internet. I should not have to upload my government ID to be able to access this content. And the Supreme Court said, you actually don't have a First Amendment right to be free from age verification. You have no First Amendment right to be free from age verification. Now, it doesn't mean that this is a direct one-to-one for adult porn content and social media, but the premise is reasonably the same. And I can see this happening in the future, potentially, that if you don't have a right to be free from age verification for content that is deemed only age appropriate for adults, then you theoretically don't have a right to be free from age verification for content that could be viewed as only appropriate for adults.
Right. Yeah.
Denmark, France, and Malaysia enacting bans or digital curfews. We kind of touched on this. Is the U.S. at risk becoming kind of a digital wild, wild west compared to other nations that are actually doing things and enforcing them?
Probably. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. Probably.
Yeah.
You know, this going back to regulated materials. The UK recently banned tobacco products for everyone moving forward. If you were born after a certain time period, you're done.
Even if you're 21, like even if you get to the age, you can't have it.
And you're done. So I don't see the United States going that far.
Yeah.
But other countries are really leading the way when it comes to regulating harmful products for young people. Because again, a young person can't consent to becoming addicted. They cannot make an informed decision to say it's fine with me if I become addicted to tobacco or social media. So I don't know that the United States is going to be on the forefront of regulation, given that some members of Congress think social media is Wi-Fi. I don't know that we're going to be the world leaders, but we certainly have some other good examples to look to, and they're going to help us collect data on what happens when we eliminate social media for young people. What happens in 5 years? And that might be an impetus for actually creating meaningful change in the United States.
One of the things I want to ask you is because we live in such a world now where social media is not just a platform for you to get addicted to and enjoy, but also a way that people now have careers and make money. And of course, I know there are a variety of teenage girls that are saying, I want to be a content creator. I want to go into content creation. Of course, that's a viable job now. I think we need to stop kind of pretending that being an influencer or being a content creator is just, you know, not a worthy profession. People are making money that way and making a living that way. And sometimes, you know, more than the more noble of the professions, like, you know, being a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer. And so for, you know, young girls who would want to do that and maybe start in their teens, and then also you have a variety of people who, you know, go viral by accident. And then, you know, I always see, you know, some of the teens that are like, you know, coming up in the industry and they're actresses or whatever it is. And it's like, you know, account ran by mom and dad or whatever it is. What is the advice that you have for, you know, those teens even, and those parents who say, okay, well, there might be something here in terms of my child actually having a future or a career in social media, but also it's a wild world. I almost feel like it's the same as like, you know, being a child actor at this point is like you're, you know, a teenage social media star. And we saw what happened to a lot of the child actors. A lot of them didn't make it out. So, you know, how do we, for people who, you know, balance the realities of that as a profession and a real thing that we can do and the harms of it.
Yeah. I mean, I have a career in social media, so no shade to content creators. Content creators are what make it interesting to be on the internet.
Right.
Right. If the internet, what is the internet without content creation? Like this, you actually have we should all thank quality content creators. That's what makes it interesting to be on social media. But child actors are far more regulated than social media content creators. I can tell you that aside from some FTC disclosures where if you have a brand partnership, you're required to be like, this is an ad. Aside from that, there is almost no regulation when it comes to content creation. If you're a child actor, you can only work so many hours a day. You can only do certain kinds of
union
content.
regulations.
You have to shoot it on set.
Exactly. Your parents have to put your money away. You got to go to school. Like that is heavily regulated. And any child actor will tell you that like sometimes those regulations, they were like, they sucked at the time. They didn't like it. You know, like we even have like Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. We have to cast twins on Full House because 1 2-year-old can't do the scene too many times.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That's simply not true. And actually, we've started seeing some states like Tennessee have enacted bans on parents monetizing their minor children's content online. And so now there's been the question of like, will some of the big influencers, family vlogger type influencers who live in Tennessee, will they leave the state since they're unable to monetize the content involving their children? And that's obviously TBD. That just recently passed. So I do think, again, we're going to see a piecemeal legislation. California might be one of the next dominoes to start enacting that kind of legislation. They certainly have heavily regulated the child acting industry. I can see them regulating the child influencer industry, even if the account is run by their mom and it's like, hey, it's me, Sharon, here's my baby, and today my baby's gonna, you know, put her hair in pigtails. Even if the child is not creating the content.
Yeah.
They're being featured in the content in a fashion that they're unable to consent to because they're minors.
Wow. We have a little fill in the blank game that we like to play here. So a few words, one word, whatever you like. We're gonna read the sentence and then blank, and you can fill in it how you feel. Okay. Number 1 is, before handing a kid a smartphone, every parent should blank.
Look in the mirror 5 more times. Check it twice, and then check it 3 times, and then check it 4 times, 5 more times. Really reconsider before handing your child a smartphone.
If social media platforms had warning labels, they should say,
warning, this program may cause death.
damn.
That has legitimately happened, unfortunately.
You said, "Damn." That was your
because-
general visceral reaction, and that
because
is
it's
true.
happening. Because if the girls are going to the hospital for self-harm because Betsy and Andrea said that they were fat,
No, it's true.
When you say it like that,
Yes.
that should be the warning.
Yes.
One word that I'd use to describe the world's response to the teen mental health crisis is
Sad. They've done way too little about it. Yeah.
The emotion teenage girls feel most after scrolling for an hour is
Anxiety.
and then you have a teen, so you probably see this with
Anxiety.
her friends and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
if I could delete one feature from every social media platform, it would be.
That's a good question. I'd like to say algorithm and going back to sequential friends only. Although I do acknowledge that I've become interested in the Highland cows because of the algorithm. I have found delight in a number of things.
For teens.
But for teenagers,
Yeah.
a sequential algorithm-free friends only. I'm just showing you the pictures your friends posted.
or cows.
Or
Those are the
nature.
only ones I
You
can make it
have
through.
puppy videos.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
Animals or your friends.
If you had to ban one social media trend overnight, it would be
People who are who try to embarrass other people with their viral content. The idea that we're all just laughing at somebody's misfortune. That's a really unhealthy thing for our psyches. It really is.
The stat about teen girls and social media that keeps you up at night.
Just the percentage of teen girls who feel a sense of hopelessness.
besides taking away the phone, what's one thing parents can do today that could actually help their kid?
Help our children learn how to use social media appropriately and model what appropriate social media use looks like. Guilty. I'm certainly not speaking from a high horse here, but if we want our kids to do better, we have to do better. The whole do as I say, not as I do does not work. So parents can begin by modeling the better behavior. We can begin by having friends over for dinner instead of spending the whole night on social media, or reading a book instead of getting mad in the Instagram comments.
Okay, last one here. In 10 years, we'll look back at kids' unrestricted access to social media the same way we look back at
letting 12-year-olds walk home from school and drink wine with their lunch, which was a thing that people used to just do.
I missed that one.
When we talk about our takeaways from having this conversation with you, and thank you so much for coming and having with us. It's been very interesting, and there's a lot of things I don't know, and as a parent I feel like I want to know so much information, but at the same time what I gathered from this is keeping it simple might just be the best thing for your kid. So you don't need the phone. Maybe you just wait until they want to have that conversation with you, but they're having it with their friends. But you have a phone that is only for communication. I love that. And then we can go outside and make sure I'm modeling the things that I would want to see instead of just telling my kids what should be done. So I think it's important that us as parents aren't constantly on our phones, even though I love to scroll, especially at the end of the day. Especially at the end of the day. So it's if I'm not doing it, why would I expect my child to use it responsibly if I'm using it as a cigarette drag at the end of a long day?
Yeah. And I think for me, the thing that stands out the most is just the level of harm at which especially teenage girls are being impacted by this, because to the point where you're in the hospital, to the point where you are constantly feeling like you're not good enough. This is the next generation of women.
Sad.
This is this is who, you know, are going to be the mothers of tomorrow. This is who are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And if they're already at 15 feeling like they're not good enough, what happens, you know, if half of them don't even make it because, you know, for whatever reason from social media, it's something that we clearly need to take a longer, harder look at than just like, oh, they'll be all right, because they're not all right. And I think that's the thing that shocks me the most. And I also think that maybe there's a society in which we, the older people, we the elders, bully them off of social media by just being there and enjoying it and making it uncool. Like maybe that is
we can
that's a solution
it.
I have right now is like uncool TikTok and they'll get off. And I mean, they'll find something else, but you know, at least it'll work for a little bit.
You're right. They will find something else, but it's kind of in our hands to guide the younger generation to use it responsibly. Sharon, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You guys can find her, Sharon Says So, on your social media channels.
But not your teens. So there.
But it's just great information, and I really appreciate you having this conversation with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Broadlines,
a production of the Female Quotient, filmed in Los Angeles.
If you liked this episode, and I know you did, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
If you have a question, maybe a work question, or you have an idea for an episode,
DM us at Female Quotient or leave a comment to get the conversation started.
Hit that follow button while you're there.
See you next week.